like, no. Darlene.
Hi. I like your Dr. Martens.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think I like want to see a dead
Well, you always
body.
look good. Yes, it definitely has dead body vibes. The haunted
Stand
woods
by
slash
me.
the backyards of people as they talk to other people. So, Gladys, this video is actually from October of last year. I don't know why I didn't post it. I just had so many things going on. But it's the story of my board. And then kind of all the things that led up to it. I find the most interesting thing oftentimes about growing as an artist and kind of as a person is that as your story progresses and you look back at it, you get so much more insight into kind of the starting points and like the little tic-tacking moments that make all the things that you were really working on. I don't know if it makes sense. It's just kind of interesting. I got these little... I went to go visit my father, and when I went to visit him, I found myself at this Target. My father's fairly old and very sick, and so while I was waiting to see him to get back from his appointment, there's a Target near where his house is. So I went in there, and it's like this dimly lit, very weirdly spaced out Target. Like, I think of all the Targets I've ever been to, this is probably the most unique design layout that I've seen. So I'm going through the front doors, and they've got their little knick-knack stuff. And the first thing I see are these little paper cutouts of these crows. And if you know me, you know I love crows. So I bought like 40 of them. They come in like, I think like 10 packs. I bought like 4. And I got this idea that I was like, this year, Alec and I are going to decorate. We hadn't decorated since we tried to sell our place. So many years had gone by since we had given ourselves kind of the freedom to feel comfortable again in our own home. To put things up, to celebrate ourselves, to put our own photos up and all these things. I think a lot of people don't realize, like when you try to sell a place, the first thing they tell you to do is basically take all your personality out of it and then just kind of exist inside of it while you wait for it to go. And so after a year and a half to 2 years of trying to do that, we kind of just stepped back from it. A lot of the problems we had faced with a corrupt board for our condo association that was problematic, that eventually just kind of absconded. So we had just been like suffering and barely pulling it together for such a long time, just going crazy. And the cats were all nuts because like we were constantly grabbing them and bringing them in and out in cases and stuff. And poor little Tom, just losing his mind. Scared every time anything rattled or jingled that he would be put in some type of carrying case. So they'd just run under the bed. It was so sad. I spent a lot of times during fire alarms that would go off just flipping the bed almost over on itself just to get to the cats so we could get them out of the building safely. And then I started kind of making art again. And like with that, Tom started kind of coming into the studio and having fun. And Mochi was being Mochi in the mochiest way possible. And I just kind of loved the studio again. Once I loved the studio again, I was like, I really need to get back to my paintings. I need to get back to what brings me closer to my existence. I make this joke with Alec that I'm like this ethereal paint being. And it has no significance beyond that and me being this painter. But I realized, like, I need to get better incorporated with that feeling again. So I made a couple of paintings. I really loved them. And I love the colors, and I love the textures, and I love the lines and the shapes and the triangles. I love the anatomy, the back of this painting, and the back of this object, just kind of coming together. Because it's a woman's back, and then it's a suit jacket turned reverse. And I know most people aren't going to get that. I know most people look at it and they have no idea what it is. And that's okay with me. I do not do things so that people can pigeonhole or comprehend or do whatever with or to my work. But I do enjoy the idea of just letting myself be one with the possibility that somewhere out there, under a rainbow, someone sees my work and immediately identifies it, and they don't need a discussion, they don't need anything. They know it's this, and that is what it is. It's like people who have to see the Mona Lisa, and like they're just like, I know it's this, and it's this, and it represents these things, and it's that. And it doesn't even matter if they're right or not. It's just that it exhibits it elicits such an interesting and wild kind of perspective as far as like how art comes together and how we make art and how all these things are a part of one another. To me, it's just so beautiful, and it just feels so right and in every way and portion properly into where I want to go with my art in the next couple of ways. So for those who don't know what I'm doing, I'm actually gessoing up this board because it's going to be my backing board for all my big pieces that I'm going to start doing again. For those who understand what gesso is kind of like a layer, under layer that you typically put on paintings, but because I use watercolors and inks, it's oftentimes very wet, and that board is a board from, it's like a sheetrock board. So it'll allow me to put push pins in it, but when I put too many holes in it, then I can just gesso over some more, and it'll keep giving me kind of a longer longevity aspect to it. It should be really interesting to see how many paintings I can do with it where it still holds up and doesn't fall apart. But the upside is they're inexpensive, so I can use them. They're pretty big. It's like a 2x4. I think it's probably around 4 feet long, 2 feet wide, to clarify. So it's not 2 feet long. For the most part, it's just going to work really well as like a backing aspect to my paintings that I want to do. When we started to sell the condo, I had to basically transform my studio into something more presentable than what I had it as. And from that, I had to kind of do all this other stuff. So the gesso is actually going to work really well to make it a little easier to just not have to worry about it kind of melting and falling apart. Plus, the more it gets wet, the more it's going to want to bend. And with gesso, you're protecting that layer so it doesn't actually do that. So it'll be fun. We get to do all these paintings again, these big monster paintings and these huge wild videos that go along with them, and that makes me so happy. So keep watching.